It's time to go inside the mega events with some of the biggest names in the trillion-dollar world of sports. Let's go beyond the scoreboard with the sports professor, Rick Horrow.
I'm the sports professor, Rick Horrow. Welcome to Beyond the Scoreboard, Inside the Mega Events. It's a trillion-dollar sports business, to be sure, and about 50 to 60% of those dollars are wrapped up in the mega events, the championships, Super Bowls, All-Star Games, World Series, Wimbledon, tennis majors, golf majors, NASCAR championships, IndyCar championships, Ryder Cup. All of those too numerous to mention. I'm in my office to kick off the show, but I'm not here a lot. I'll be on the road on a weekly basis to bring you the inside tips from those major events. The balance sheets, who wins, who loses, the interviews, how you put on the events, and how you sustain them. This is all brought to you by Edelman Financial.
Money doesn't come with instructions. That's why we created Edelman Financial Services to help you with everything from college and retirement planning to managing your investments, helping you achieve retirement security. We're among the nation's top financial advisors. Come see how we can help you.
The decade is coming to an end. Sports business more prolific than ever, a $1.3 trillion business, and nobody led his part of the industry better and with more enlightenment than Paul Tagliabue, commissioner of the NFL. Here he is now.
Paul Tagliabue was the 7th chief executive officer of the NFL. He had a 7-year tenure.
Georgetown Law, not Harvard.
Did I say Harvard yet? I'm going to get to Georgetown Law in a second. Does he need you to represent him? I think Paul's going to be okay? Georgetown Law, he was the rebounding leader for the Georgetown basketball team for about 20 minutes in the early 60s before he became eclipsed by other larger and better athletes. Is that a fair way of putting it?
6 dozen of them.
About 6 dozen of them. Knight Commission on College Athletics, chairman of the RISE Foundation, right title, and a whole host of post-NFL activities. Really, really, really important. You're celebrating the commissioner. You're celebrating the 40th anniversary of your succeeding Pete Rozelle as NFL commissioner. What do you think has changed most in the NFL from that fateful day 40 years ago to today?
First of all, it's 30 years, I think.
Is it 30 years?
1989 to now.
Commissioner, 30 years ago. Wow, all right. So
Harvard didn't teach math.
No, you make me feel a little better about that. I apologize.
Your
I can't.
point about 50 years of marketing. It's 50 years.
It rubbed off on me.
50 years since I started working on NFL Matters.
Yeah. That's
June of '69. So you got one number right.
Got it. Good. All right. In the 30 years, thank you very much. In the 30 years, we don't care anymore about the NFL. All right. So in the 30 years, talk a bit about how the NFL has changed from 1989 to date.
Well, I'm not sure the NFL has changed as much as society has changed, and technology has changed media and entertainment, and in many ways changed society in very fundamental ways, as we see with the current issues about elections and what can be done globally. And so I think the league has always thrived on 3 things. Number 1 is competition on the field. Number 2 is collaboration among the owners, sharing revenue in ways that are unprecedented anywhere in the world. And 3 is community. And that was Pete Rozelle's vision. It was my set of expectations and premises when I went there, and I think that still is what's most important. The more distractions now, and of course you have things evolving that call themselves sports that are not really sports in a traditional sense. That's a complication. You have gambling, you have lots of things changing, but at the core, it's still about competition, whether it's NFL, NBA, hockey, soccer, anybody else.
This may take all night, but I know you have a way to be able to do this. On page 298, you talk about the NFL lessons in the book. Can you just kind of generally summarize what you talked about there and why that's so important?
Well, the main point I'm making in page 298, if that's it, is that anticipation and innovation are the key to success. you have to anticipate the future. Jack Welch, when he was running GE, used to say it's not enough to look ahead, it's important to look around the corner. And very few people can look around the corner and see what's there. That takes a special set of priorities. And innovation, I think, is also the key. Everything, it's in the lessons learned. If it ain't broke, fix it anyway. That was a way of telling people in the organization that whatever we're doing can be done better, and it's your job to figure out what better means and how do we get to better. Technology has made that in some ways easier, but in some ways harder, because it's easy to change a lot of things with technology, but what sticks, what works, and what's additive rather than cannibalizing. The other thing that's in there, which people talk about all the time, it's, I think, the last point, have a high tolerance for conflict. Because conflict in any organization can be very productive if it's managed and controlled. It can be very destructive if it's not managed and controlled. But anything that you're doing is going to involve conflict within your own organization, with your partners, and with the public. So have a high tolerance for it. I think one of the great World War II generals said, when everyone in my organization is thinking alike, I know a lot of people are not thinking. So that's got to be your premise as well.
All you need to do is let those words resonate and apply them to every situation around, and you realize where we are without any further elaboration. So, Commissioner, 30 years ago when you started, there were important aspects of athletes as role models. I'm not even, you would admit, over the last few years, it's become really intense. The discipline issues, the role issues, the all of the issues involved in it, without getting that specific. Has it become more of an issue, more of a problem? Is social media at play? In your estimation, I guess finally, has the NFL post Tagliabue done a pretty good job in this whole area?
I think so. You know, I think so much has changed with the money in the game. 50 years ago, which is what we're talking about.
Thank you.
When I started working on NFL stuff, the total revenue of the National Football League was $130 million. 26 teams with average revenue of $5 million per team. Today it's about $400 million per team and probably $15 billion league-wide. And what does that mean in terms of the players and the perception of the players? Players 50 years ago were making $18,000, $28,000. Probably a high-paid player was making $45,000. Don Shula was an outstanding football player in the NFL. He made $8,000 a year, 8, not 80. So that's part of the environment we're in. What does that mean? It means I think as much as there's respect for players, there's a much higher set of expectations for players. There's also resentment about players. There's a feeling in society that the players are privileged. They're overpaid in the estimation of most people. Players making $12 million. I'm trying to get $12 an hour as a minimum wage. How can I identify with that player, especially if the player is engaged in types of conduct that I don't admire? So I think the challenges are really much more dramatic today than they were, because the players are no longer part of the community. They're apart from the community in many, many ways. They live in gated communities, but they're apart from the community in terms of how they're compensated, and in the sense that they're privileged from the time they're freshmen in high school and they sped through college without taking courses. I think in that environment, the league's done a lot of things very good, and the challenges are bigger than they've ever been, but the league is responding very well.
Finally, before Q&A, 1 minute apiece, easy question. Where is the business and philanthropy aspect of the business going in the next 50 years, and what advice would you give people out there relative to that? How's that?
I think what's going on is, maybe this is why EVERFI was created. I think we're at a time where the societal changes are so enormous that businesses cannot look at as philanthropy or charity. They have to integrate into what they do respect for values other than money. Think about what's happening. The environmental changes. Can't say enough about those. The changes in culture, the Me Too movement, the role of women in society, how education is delivered and not delivered, the role of a job with artificial intelligence and virtual reality. what's going to happen to the millions of people who are displaced? So wherever you look in society today, the changes are dramatic. If you look back 50 years ago and say, what were the dramatic changes in 1970, 50 years ago, I don't think you could find one that compares to any of 5 or 6 or 7 that's occurring now. So that, I think, is why corporations are being so much more sensitive to community, because the communities are facing challenges that probably in the last 100 years, maybe going back to the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, are unprecedented.
We've got to rack that up and get it to John so he can use that. That's about as good as it gets. Our other honor? Yes, sir, Your Honor.
That's